Welcome to Fun and Games Side Quests. Every episode is a different host sharing a video game they love and why they love it.
Hey everybody, my name is ProfNoctis and I am a faculty member at the University of Alabama where I teach religion and video games, or rather religion through video games. I'm a content creator. I work mainly on Final Fantasy games, story games, narrative, JRPG types, anything with a really good story. And what I do is I try to draw comparisons to real world philosophies, ideologies, real world material. To help people appreciate and celebrate the games that they already love even more. I run the channel ProfNoctis over on YouTube and Twitch, where I do live stream what I call lecture plays, which is a combination of Let's Plays and academic lectures. And I also do a series of video essays over on YouTube as well. Today, I'm talking about Final Fantasy 15, which is coincidentally the way that I got my screen name, my handle, ProfNoctis, because I teach a class at the University of Alabama based on my dissertation, which is Messianic and Sacred Kingship through Final Fantasy 15. Not only is this a class at Bama, but it was also the topic of my dissertation, asking the question of, can you use video games in education, and what is the impact on it? Are there any benefits? The answer was a resounding yes. And so it should come as no surprise that I absolutely love Final Fantasy 15. I've been a fan of Final Fantasy ever since the earliest days. I started with Final Fantasy 1, then went to Final Fantasy 4, and that's really where I got my teeth sunk into the franchise, I guess. I read the text of the game while sitting in my dad's lap. He would help me think about the characters that I was playing as. He would also help me sound out words like Behemoth and Bahamut and Leviathan and all that kind of stuff, because I was still kind of learning to read at that point. So I fell in love with the franchise with Final Fantasy 4/2 for the Super Nintendo. And I've been a fan ever since. So when Final Fantasy 15 came out, I was a day one kind of guy. I went to the midnight release, picked it up, and played it copiously for the next several days. And it was during that time that I fell in love with the game. I loved the characters, and I loved the story that it was telling me. It should also be noted that I was not disappointed by the fact that this is not Final Fantasy Versus 13. When they shifted focus to Final Fantasy 15 rather than Versus 13, I knew it was not going to be the same game as had been hyped in trailers and marketing. So I went into this with a blank slate, a canvas, ready to be painted upon. And I'm so glad that I did that, because I can appreciate the game for what it is rather than what it wasn't according to marketing. All that to say, when I'm playing Final Fantasy 15, I fell in love with it. Fell in love with Noctis as a character. I loved his journey as a person, which I'll get into in just a moment. But I love the cast of characters as well: Gladio, Ignis, Prompto, and even characters that were relegated to side roles like Luna Freya, the key female protagonist in the game, and Iris and Cindy, as well as Sid and Ravus and many of the others. I feel like it is a stellar cast of characters that slept on. So I can gush about Final Fantasy 15 all day long and how it's changed my life as a content creator and as a faculty member, as a researcher, and a person of academia. But I think that there's a few key pieces that really stuck out to me about Final Fantasy 15. I want to go through those. First of all, the narrative story and structure of the game really, really worked for me. This is the first open world proper Final Fantasy game, I guess. And by that, I mean, there have been open world segments in other games, but this is the first one that for at least half the game, before it gets really linear, this is an open world sort of scenario. You can go pretty much anywhere and you can choose to do the main story or not. And this for me really worked. I guess as a researcher, as a person that really enjoys travel, I love to sink my teeth into the worlds that a game is giving to me. And so I'm like looking at every rock, I'm analyzing every enemy. And also I don't use mini maps because I like to utilize the landscape and the geography that a game is actually giving to me. It drives me crazy when I can't turn the mini map off because it's just such a temptation to just go straight to the next icon or whatever. But this is an important gameplay facet in Final Fantasy 15 because as the first open world Final Fantasy, the developers chose to tell a story through that open world, meaning you can't just go through the story beat for beat and get everything that this game has to offer. Now, for some people, that is a huge detriment. But for me, somebody that absolutely loves to learn about the world around them, that was a real win. That was a huge win for me. And because my first playthrough was like 180, 190 hours, I got the story in spades. And it was absolutely amazing. Some of the things that I did as I was going through this is I read everything from item descriptions to little manuscripts that you can find out in the world. I listened to audio recordings. I stopped and played radio transmissions every time I found them. I also didn't really fast travel very much, so I was getting the banter from the guys in the car throughout the entire game. And for me, this really, really worked really well because you are fed the story in a slow drip and it just builds out this believable narrative. Now, it doesn't mean that it's a focused narrative. You're really piecing it together almost like a Dark Souls game in some cases, where you're inferring some things and imagining some things, but being in that world, it's grounded, right? So that to me was a really cool thing. So the story itself really worked as far as the pacing and the discovery aspect. The other thing about the story that really worked was that the further you get into it, the more it becomes clear that this is Noctis's story. There's a lot of great characters, like I mentioned earlier, but Noctis's story is all about his ascension. In fact, this is a framework that I use in my class. Every great myth, hero, and especially kingship narrative in history, even leaders like Hercules, all the way to biblical kings like David and Solomon, stuff like that in the Jewish scriptures. Each of them follow a framework that I call the ascension story. And it follows, first of all, a king's trials, which are going to test the king's heart and it's going to influence or increase the king's influence in the world. So, reputation, think side quests. You kill varmints for Cindy as Noctis, and that builds people's, you know, um, opinion of you, and you gain influence as their king or leader. The second thing are relationships. And in this game, you have some great relationships, particularly with what's called your Crown's Guard. You have Gladio, who's essentially a protector. You've got Prompto, who's a best friend, a person that Noctis can really be himself around. And you have Ignis, who is kind of like an advisor sort of person. And each of these three represent a different facet of kingship, not just for Noctis, but in history, right? Good kings have good friends and mentors and leaders that are accompanying them on their reign on the throne and all of that kind of stuff. The third thing that was really striking to me with Noctis's story, though, is the idea of responsibility and how he moves from a punk kid that really doesn't want to be king and feels like he's lost everything and all that kind of stuff to a king that takes charge of people around him, and not in like a demeaning sort of way. He takes control of situations that are out of people's control, and that's something that he can do as the anointed king. And this is a really cool learning for him. There's one moment when a significant character to his party dies, and he looks at some of those that survived this attack, and he says to them, um, they're going to pay for this. This was on me, and you're going to be safe when you come with me, and we're going to take care of you from now on. I think that that's a powerful moment of responsibility, and it's also something that's really powerful for the player as they are experiencing this story through Noctis's eyes. The final aspect of an ascension story, though, is what we call the deliverance of order to chaos. And this is what Noctis does in spades. Now, this game is not simply a run around with your friends, ride in a convertible sort of thing, which is what many would have you believe. And that is a super fun and terrific part of this game. But this game really delves into some deep theological implications of what really is at stake in the world when there are gods or attributes of different gods that are at war with one another. And Noctis has to bring order to that chaos because that chaos is having a ripple effect throughout the whole world. And this is something that we talk about in depth in my class, especially as we look at different theological traditions and we try to break those down and maybe even deconstruct and reconstruct in some ways those divine attributes and theologies. So for me, the story, I've spent a great deal of time talking about it, but the story for me is par with some of the greatest video game stories that are out there. Other reasons why I love this game is the freedom. Include the freedom that you have riding around, like I said, with your friends. You are on a road trip bachelor party that then goes down. Right, it absolutely just kind of explodes around you, and there's some seriousness that begins to happen. But when you are riding around with friends, there's so much to do. There's mini games. There, you can play pinball machines. You can go and do side quests, bounty hunts, all these kind of really interesting and fun things that just kind of build the characterization. And while you are going, there is constant banter, something that I really love in a game when characters feel like they have their own personalities. And so Prompto will chime in humming a song or whistling, and Gladio will call him down, and Ignis will bring everybody back to like to equilibrium and stuff. And to see these relationships and this chemistry unfold over the course of your journey is just super super compelling and fun. And that's what I love about the second part of why I love this game. It's just fun. It's fun, and you are hanging out with your friends on an unforgettable journey. The third thing that I love about this game is that it is a marvel when it comes to graphics, when it comes to music, when it comes to immersion. They've done an incredible job with this game of making you feel like you are in the role of Noctis. His joy is your joy, his loss is your loss. But you only get that when you fully allow yourself to be immersed in this world. This is what I tell my students. You're going to get out of this game what you put into it. And not everybody likes that. Okay. Some people want to be kind of force fed or spoon fed a story, but this one you really do have to work at it. For crying out loud, you've got to go watch an anime on YouTube, a 5-episode anime on YouTube for Final Fantasy 15. You've got to watch a prequel called Kingsglaive. That's like you got to order a DVD or watch that on a streaming service. There are so many side stories that aren't in the actual game. And so, yeah, you do have to bring all of that together to really enjoy 100% of the story. But at the end of it, as somebody that has written a literal dissertation on it, it's worth it. It was one of the most fun games that I have ever played. The music still hypes me up like any good song like from your childhood does when you listen to it, and it's like it transports you back to like riding in a parent's car or to a dentist's office. Like you just have these memories associated with these songs. This is what Final Fantasy 15 soundtrack does to me. When I hear Apocalypsis Noctis today, I'm ready to like PR in the gym. When I hear Prayer de Luna, again, I get a little misty because it's such a powerful moment for both Luna and Noctis, as she gives what is this powerful speech to people, and it really is her first reunion with Noctis in like a decade. Just a beautiful moment, and that music just hits me all over again, with washes over me with nostalgia and memory. This game was overlooked in a lot of ways, underrated, but for me, you know, critiques against it notwithstanding, this is a 7 out of 10 game that is a 10 out of 10 game for me. And if you go into it with that mindset, I think that you'll get a 10 out of 10 experience as well. One final thing that I will say, a real pro tip. I've already kind of given you one. Turn off mini maps and nav systems. Number 2, though, go to Type C controls. That allows trigger buttons to be the attack buttons and not just the square or X button or whatever it is for your particular controller. Those two things change the flow of the game. Other than that, just take your time and enjoy the ride because it is a heck of a ride. And if you're ever at the University of Alabama, look me up and come and take my class, and you'll learn to appreciate it in a whole new way. Again, this has been ProfNoctis, and I've been gushing about Final Fantasy 15. You can find my lecture plays over on YouTube and on Twitch, as well as video essays and my Prof Weekly show over on all of these places. And until next time, walk tall, my friends, and happy gaming.
Hey,
Oh, hey, Jeff.
what's going on, guys?
Oh, talking about Superman.
Oh, cool. I could talk about Superman.
I could talk some more about Superman.
We know.
I'll bet a few people would want to get in on this.
I'm down.
You know it.
That sounds like fun. I'll do it.
Cool, let's do it. We can call the show Men of Steel.
And you can find it at certainpov.com.
Or wherever you get your podcasts.
Yay.
CertainPOV.com.